All right, here we go today on lesson 13.6, which is zeros in decimal quotients. All right, so we're going to be looking at having some zeros in our quotients, and also some zeros are going to need to be added to our dividends. Now, hopefully you remember those math vocab words. What is a quotient? We're going to have zeros in the quotient. The quotient is the answer to a division problem. So it's going to be this right here. You're also going to be needing to add zeros to the dividend. Where's the dividend? This right here is the dividend. These little guys right here are the divisors. Okay, so we are going to need to be adding zeros to our dividend, and we are going to find some zeros in our quotients, and that's what we are going to be adding from yesterday's lesson to today's. Okay, an important thing to remember when you are dividing decimals, you are dividing them just as if they are whole numbers, which means that you need to remember this up here. The steps. Does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers? Those are the steps to long division. Divide, multiply, subtract, check, bring down. So let's go ahead and get started and try some of these. And we will quickly learn where we need to have some zeros. So 4 goes into 0 how many times? 0 times. All right, so let's move to the next digit. 4 goes into 3 how many times? 0. We got to keep adding. So how about 36? 4 goes into 36. Oh, yes, now we're talking. 4 goes into 36 9 times. So 9 times 4 is 36. We have oopsie. Let's fix that. We have divided. We have multiplied. Now we're going to subtract. We're going to check. That means you check to see that what you have left so far is less than this 4 over here. The 0 is less than the 4, so we're good to go. We can keep going. So we checked, now we bring down. We're going to bring down that 8. And then once you do that, you start all the way over again. You do not ever stop long division until there's nothing left to bring down anymore. Okay? So you just brought down. If you bring something down, that means you have to start over and do the whole process again. 4 goes into 8 twice. 2 times 4 is 8. Subtract. Check. Yep, we're less than 4. Bring down. Nothing left to bring down. So we can be done, except for we have to take this little decimal. Can't forget about him. Bring him straight up to finish. And then we've got our answer is 92 hundredths. All right. So putting these 2 zeros in there was something that's a little bit different, those zeros in the quotient. Now we're going to move on to this next one, and we are going to need to use zeros in our dividend for this one, because when you are dividing decimals, typically it's going to ask you to not have a remainder. You don't want to say 5 6/100 remainder 2. Okay, that's not going to make any sense to have remainders. So when doing decimals, the goal is to not have remainder. In order to not have a remainder, you are going to need to keep adding zeros to your dividend right here until you have no remainder left. Now let's talk about this. Is there a difference between 3.2 and 3.20? Or 3.200 or 0000 or zeros till infinity? No. Well, let's get rid of that ruler. These zeros are not changing the value of the decimal at all. That's why we can add them and get rid of our remainder. Okay, so let's try this. Here we go. 5 goes into 3 how many times? 0 times. So let's move to the next digit. 5 goes into 32 how many times? Goes into there 6 times. 6 times 5 is 30. Subtract 2. 2 is less than 5, so we're good there. Then we bring down. Well, there's nothing left to bring down. And we've still got this remainder here of 2. So here is the problem. This is what's different from yesterday's lesson. You have this remainder. What are we going to do? I'll show you. We are going to add a 0 to our dividend. We can do that because it's not changing the value at all. But now we have a 0 that we can bring down so we can keep going in our problem. Okay, now we have 20, so we start over. 5 goes into 20 4 times. 4 times 5 is 20. Subtract, you get 0. 0 is less than 5. Nothing left to bring down. Our answer is finished. There's no longer a remainder. So now all we need to do is take this decimal. Don't forget about him at the very, very end. Bring him up to right here. We have 64 hundredths. All right? So that is how we get rid of a remainder. We keep adding zeros to the dividend, bringing them down until we are finished. All right, let's try this guy over here. 14 goes into 1 0 times. 14 goes into 15 once. Multiply, subtract, check. Yep, it's less than 14, and bring down. Okay, now we start over that we brought down. 14 goes into 11. It doesn't. Don't get stuck here and confused and not know what to do. You're right, it doesn't go into 11 just like it didn't go into 1 up here. We put this 0 right here. Okay, so now again, 14 does not go into 11. We put, oh my goodness, let's keep this here. We put a 0 here. 0 times 14. So, okay, once you put a 0 there, you divide it, right? 14 goes into 11 0 times. Now you have to multiply. 0 times 14 equals 0. Subtract. We still have 11. It's less than 14, but now we can bring down the 2. 14 goes into 112. Here's where it gets a little tough. You're going to have to do some guesstimating. You say to yourself, does 14 go in there once? It does. Does it go in there twice, 3 times, 4 times? How many times is it going to go in? All right. Well, if this were 10, it would go into about 110 times. We know this is always going to be a single digit. So we could do something like we could try 9, or we could try 8, or we could try 7. And really what you're going to have to do is just kind of go off to the side and try it. All right, so I'm going to try 14 times. Let me try 9. Let's see how that goes. 4 times 9 is 36. 9 times 1 is 9. 10, 11, 12, 126. Oh, that's too much. Look it. We want to find how many times 14 goes into 112. So it's not going to be 9. Let's go down 1 then. Let's try 14 times 8. 4 times 8 is 32. 8 times 1 is 8 plus 3 is 11. Ding, 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 ding. There, we've got it. Exactly. So 14 goes into 112 8 times. 8 times 14 is 112. We subtract and we get a remainder of 0. There's nothing left to bring down. All that's left to do is to take this decimal and move it straight up. All right. And we know that we don't really need this first 0. It's not holding a place. It has no value. So we could get rid of that and just say our answer is going to be 1 8/8. All right, let's move on to our last one here. We've got 8 goes into 1. Okay, and you say, well, it doesn't go into 1. So how are we dividing 1 by 8? Well, sometimes you do. For instance, you're going to take one whole pizza and you could divide it into 8 slices. How much does everyone get? If you were writing this as a fraction, you would say, well, everyone gets 1/8. Well, we need to look at it for this chapter as a decimal. So let's actually try to do 1 divided by 8. All right, we're going to get a part of, a fraction of, a decimal of a whole. So 8 goes into 1. How many times? 0, right? It doesn't. Okay, 0 times 8. I'm sorry, 8 goes into 1 0 times. So here we go. I mean, we could do what I was doing. You could say 0 times 8 is 0. Subtract, check, bring down. There's nothing left here to bring down. That's it. All right? We can't have an answer of 0 with remainder of 1. So what are we going to do? We are going to put a decimal here because this is a whole, right? So one whole has a decimal point right there. Now we can start adding zeros. Let's just stop for a second and think, if we didn't put that decimal point there, we have 1. If I just add zeros to a whole number, I can't add zeros to a whole number, right? That changes it from 1 to 10 to 100 to 1,000. We cannot just add zeros without changing the value. How can we keep the value of 1? That is one whole, but so is this, okay? So if you have a whole number like this and you need some extra zeros, just make sure that you put that decimal point there, all right? Why did it not matter over here on this one? Because there was already a decimal point in there. So you can add zeros after the decimal point and it won't matter. But this one needed a decimal point so that you could add the zeros. Okay, so you've got this 0 now that you can bring down. Now you've got 10. 8 goes into 10 once. 1 times 8 is 8. Subtract. And you still have a remainder. There's a remainder of 2. So, but we can add another 0 because there's a decimal. So we're good. We can keep adding zeros for a long, long time. So let's bring this 0 down and we get 20. 8 goes into 20 how many times? Well, it goes in once, it goes in twice, 3 times. Nope, not 3 times. 3 times 8 is 24. So let's just say 8 goes into 20 twice. 2 times 8 is 16, subtract, and we still have a remainder. No problem. We're going to keep adding zeros till it comes out even. Add another 0. Bring it down. 40. 8 goes into 45 times. 5 times 8 is 40. Subtract. 0. 0 is less than 8, and there's no remainder. All that's left to do is to put the decimal point from here, right there. And there we've got our answer, okay? So that's all you should need to do. There may be something in your homework that I want to make you aware of. And we've talked about this a little bit, but I want to mention it again just as a reminder. So I'm going to grab your workbook and just get an example of one of these for your homework. And actually, you know what? It doesn't have any of these in your homework for today, which is a bummer because I really wanted to go over this with you. Let me see if I can find one. Hold tight. I really want you to see this kind of a problem because sometimes it stumps you and it really doesn't need to because it's fairly simple. Here we go. I just found one. All right. If you have a problem, for instance, that says n divided by 4 when n equals 12.36. All right, let's look at that a second while I make some room. Over here, let's get rid of all these. So the question is, what is n divided by 4? Well, okay, n divided by 4. You've got numbers and letters. How confusing, right? Not really. You're going to get into algebra. It's going to have numbers and letters mixed. So it wants to know what n divided by 4 is. But look at it. It says, what is n divided by 4 when n equals this amount? So it tells you if n equals this amount, you can take this amount and drop it right into where that is. Okay, so n equals 12.36, and it wants to know what n, or 12.36, is when it's divided by 4. So let's do that over here. 12.36 divided by 4. If we do this, then we'll find out what n is. 4 goes into 1, 0 times. 4 goes into 12, 3 times. 3 times 4 is 12. Subtract, you get a 0. 0 is less than 4. So you bring down the next digit, which is 3. 4 goes into 3. It doesn't. It goes in 0 times. So you put a 0 up there. 0 times 4 is 0. Subtract. You get a remainder of 3. You still can't put 4 in. 3 is less than 4, so check. We're good. But if we bring down this 6, now we're talking. 4 into 36 is 9. 9 times 4 is 36. Subtract, get a 0, check. Nothing left to bring down. There is no remainder. So all that's left to do is to take our decimal, move it up, and our answer is going to be 3 9/100. You do not need to leave this 0 here. It is kind of pointless. All right, so that's how you do that. Don't let these freak you out, okay? When it says n divided by 4 or n divided by anything, when n equals this amount, all it's asking you to do is drop it in place of that. Okay, it's kind of like a little code. Okay, I think this should be fairly easy for you guys after yesterday's lesson. You're just adding those zeros until it takes care of the remainder, or you're adding zeros at places like this right here. Okay, when you get to this point and you bring down and it still doesn't work, you've got to put this 0 up here and just do all the steps, like putting, dividing, multiplying, subtracting, and then bringing down the very next one. Okay, I think that should be good, guys. Hopefully that's enough examples for you that you can do your math worksheet for today and that it makes sense. All right, love you guys and see you tomorrow.